Oh, what the hell's going on? Yes, thank you, chat, for reminding me how late we are. But that's okay. This is a show worth waiting for. It's Mixed Bag Panel. It's number, what number are we at? We're at number 5, you guys. It's already number 5. I can't believe it. It's going great. So we have some guests tonight, some exciting guests. I'll bring the first one up. He'll introduce himself, where you can find him, some of his background and whatnot. Welcome to the stage, Austin Peterson.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jim Bob. It's an honor. Appreciate it. It's good to see you again. Yeah, people call me AP for Liberty. You can find me everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, but probably the best place to catch me is on my Wake Up America show. So if you go to rumble.com/AP for Liberty, I've got a 5-day-a-week morning talk show. It's a great way to start your day, stay informed about what's happening in the world, and yeah, keep up to date with everything in the world of liberty. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And Jay, let the audience know.
Yeah, Jay Dyer. I cover everything from geopolitics to movies, film symbolism, esoterica, religious debates, open panel madness, feral wine moms with Virginia Slims in their mouth calling in to argue and rap battle with me, literally. I also do the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show every Friday. Yeah, that's it. I've got a few books. You can find me over at Jay's Analysis or on YouTube under Jay Dyer or on Twitter as well and Instagram.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for being here, Jay. One of the first things Austin said is, I said, oh, we have other panelists like Jay. And he said, we're not going to talk about God, are we? I said, no, it could come up, but this is a more relaxed, sort of fun. We try to stay a little bit away from like the meta and the philosophy because we like it, but it could bore some people. But we do want to get into some technology. And I actually wanted to start with this is Jay's been covering, smart cities and these concepts for many years now, and now people are starting to really hone in on what it is. Someone like Patrick Wood, I think his name is, wrote these great books where he outlines all of the companies, why they're positioning themselves the way they are. And from my view, it kind of looks like this. If you're a big company and you could mass produce and be the explicit provider of all products and services, well, the next step would be take ownership in this over the city, right? And take some sort of stake in the city, kind of like BlackRock seems to be doing. And this is an interesting topic because it seems that technology companies, along with products and service companies, are looking at cities now as platforms. Now, that sounds wacky, right? We go, what's a platform? Oh, it's the thing on my phone I use. Are you on that platform? Well, platforms come with TOS, and they come with community guidelines and all these things. So what if a city was owned by a company, and the company had TOS and community guidelines that in a way maybe replaced, your Bill of Rights, your basically everything we know about how to behave in society? I think that's the plan. It might be hyperbolic. I don't think so. But I did want to get your take, Austin. I'm actually let Jay give a summary of that. see if I missed anything. But I did want to take your position, Austin, because as a libertarian, I wanted to know from you how you see that progressing, and if there's any red flags that might come up from the principled view of libertarianism, because it seems like if a company can take over a city, a company can take over larger than a city, and if they buy it, in a way, it's fair game, right? So, Jay, give a quick summary of smart cities and what you think, and then I'll let Austin tackle that hard question.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned this idea of cities as platforms. I remember watching Vitalik, the co-creator of Ethereum, not too long ago, talk about the possibility of creating cities as platforms, and they're marketing it, at least in the crypto side, and maybe even Trump has given a nod at times to the idea of freedom cities. I don't exactly know what that means, but the idea is that, well, there will be smart cities. It's unavoidable. So maybe we can have like a libertarian smart city where it's freedom oriented versus, I don't know, Google and Bill Gates's smart city, which will not be freedom oriented. It will be, oriented towards, I'm sure, carbon credits, controlling your movements, rationing meat, all the things that we would expect a dystopian smart city to be. I think the idea comes out of the technocratic movement in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, which was kind of a weird fringe version of socialism at the time. And it kind of got resurrected when Brzezinski wrote Between Two Ages. There was always technocrats. There was always people in different power strata or strata of the power structure that believed in technocracy and thought they could have these plastic computer AI cities of the future. But I think Brzezinski really breathed new life into it with Between Two Ages. It ended up being something that the Rockefellers thought was a great idea. They put a lot of money behind it, promoting it, and it really became U.S. policy officially throughout the Cold War. And then the corporation Silicon Valley I view as a bunch of kind of private corporate partnerships that also adopted this model under a veneer of libertarianism. So that's the danger, I think, is that it'll be sold as convenience, security, utopia, and even the ones that are billed as kind of libertarian, I would be very suspicious of.
Yeah, before you answer to this, Austin, welcome to the stage, Chad. Thanks for sorting that out. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Let us know where we can find you and what you're all about.
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Sorry, I was having internet complications at the most convenient time. So, so my name is Chad O. Jackson. I am an independent researcher and business owner here in Dallas, Texas. I'm also a film producer or co-producer, I should say. I can be found on YouTube at Chad O. Jackson, as well as Instagram at Chad O. Jackson and X at Chad O. Jackson. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm not a
Republican.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. You're not a what?
I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm politically interested, but I don't believe that any of the political parties or anything like that have the answer to our problems. I believe that most of the problems that we have can be handled at the individual or ground level. So that's my take on politics, or that's the approach that I take on politics. So
got it. All right. Well, thank you for that, Austin. Now, you see the challenge of this question, right? The smart city complex, as Jay and I laid it out in our various ways. Bigger companies owning more of everything and having a natural or unnatural monopoly on it. You decide. But the thing is, what occurs now? Like, what's your take from a libertarian position? What are some of the advantages you see? But are there some things that you're going, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something off here about companies taking over like this?
Not so much. I do like what I'm hearing from Chad and Jay, and I definitely think that there's a little Chad and a little Jay inside of me, right? So maybe they're the angels on my shoulder, but how can corporations possibly screw things up more than the government already has? I mean, how can you not be excited about a little bit of an experiment with anarcho-capitalism? How can you not look at what Javier Milei is doing in Argentina and not be like, Ron Swanson, slash it, slash it, slash it, and have an opportunity for Samsung, who builds these beautiful cell phones that I love. My Galaxy Samsung S21 Ultra. You know, there's a little community outside of Seoul, speaking of South Korea, where our phones are manufactured. This is a really fascinating case of what you guys are talking about. It's a modern private city called Songdo, built from scratch, 1,500 acres of reclaimed land. It's a smart city known for its advanced technology, eco-friendly design, high-quality infrastructure developed by Gale International and the Incheon Metropolitan City Songdo. It's a new model of urban development focusing on sustainability, technology, and the quality of life. Do you think that they could do worse than they're going to do worse than San Francisco? Do you think the people in South Korea, the corporations that build these, are going to let their private property turn into what our major cities are turning into here in the United States? You know, there is no utopia, right? There's not going to be a perfect city, or there's some cities that are better than others. There are some cities that are doing better than others. But there is no such thing as a fully private city, and there's no such thing as a fully government city. Every city and every country has aspects of both market and then government control. The only few times that there have ever been like real true experiments to try and set up privatized communities, most of the time it's failed miserably. But that's because they got chased out either by local tribes or governments come in and try to prevent them from setting them up. So, you know, let people experiment a little bit. You know, let these cities come to fruition. Let people try and live there. You know, Epcot, remember Epcot? The whole experiment of Epcot was supposed to be this new city of the future. It didn't really work out. Walt Disney World is not bad, but Epcot didn't become that perfect shining example of a private city that everybody wanted to live at. Turns out people don't really actually enjoy living in those types of communities, but they should have the choice to do it. And a corporation certainly isn't going to do any worse than Gavin Newsom of California and whoever the mayor of San Francisco is at this point. I mean, I think those are good arguments. What do you gentlemen think?
I'll let either of the two on the bottom respond to that.
Go ahead,
Well,
Chad.
Go ahead, Chad.
I think I follow what's going on here. Although I was a little late to the show. When it comes to smart cities, that's what we were talking about, right? Mm-hmm. Smart cities. I do think that when you look at technological advances over the course of the last 50 years, it makes me wonder, how will we advance, quote unquote, technologically over the next 50 years? So I think smart cities are to some extent inevitable. I am totally against the federalization of such cities or taxpayer dollars going to such cities on a state or federal level. When it comes to the local level, however, if some random city in the middle of, Washington or where have you, wish to utilize whatever local tax dollars to build this thing as a kind of experiment, I mean, go ahead. But there is a lot of issues that come up as a result of these things, namely intrusive surveillance and other such issues. So I think people should think twice. I mean, I know for me in the city that I live here in Texas, we're pretty much like-minded insofar that if some politician comes out of nowhere who's wet behind the ears and have these big visions and ideas about how to change the city and how to make us more tourist friendly, this person is typically laughed at a court, because we tend to be people who want for our government to be small. We don't want our property taxes raised, and so we want for our councilmen to be a lot of boring old guys who don't have any ideas or any visions about anything. Just keep things the way they are, because we don't want you to build the next Disneyland at the expense of our tax dollars. And so, understandably, in a country as ideologically diverse as ours, you're going to see more and more of these cities coming up or popping up. I mean, when you see the technological advances just in smart homes, a lot of people's homes, I mean, the business that I own happens to be in the construction kind of industry. And we're seeing a lot of these smart homes popping up where you can talk to your house and you can set the oven, just set the
house rights. I call it the direction toward house rights. No, yeah, I think your summary there is good, because I do agree with the inevitability of some of these things, but then pointing out, like, well, what are some of the things that we might not be able to foresee, or some of us might be. Jay, do you see anything that was missing in Chad or Austin's assessment of this?
Yeah, I think they brought up really good points. I didn't hear anything I disagree with. The only thing I would take issue with maybe is just, for me, I mean, just from a practical perspective, it looks like the same structure that would build the smart city, whether it's Gavin Newsom trying to do it or whether it's Google. I mean, to me, it's like the same. I don't really see a huge difference between the two, because for so long we've had really controlled by a military industrial complex that is essentially a uniparty, that is a public-private partnership, secret deep state that runs everything. So to me, it's going to be the same thing, whether it's marketed as Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook city or whether it's marketed as Vitalik's Ethereum city. Like, to me, I think it's going to be the same. I just see a lot of this as irrelevance. You could look at, for example, the structure of how in the Cold War, right before the Cold War set off, you could look at the way that Lenin structured cities and tried to utilize corporatism. Stalin also tried to utilize corporatism. So I don't really see a huge difference between corporatism and private, what's called free market libertarian governance. To me, it all ends up being the same thing in practice. And what we end up debating is a lot of ideals. We end up debating, yeah, but in theory, the city that's truly voluntaristic and anarcho-capitalist would be so much better. Yeah, but like, where is that, right? To me, it's no different than Marx's end goal of the withering away of the state and the final freedom that's going to result from Marxism. And so for me, again, I like a lot of libertarian ideas. I was libertarian for a while when I was younger. To me, it's just like, at the end of the day, they kind of have the same presuppositions, which are materialism, which are essentially the highest goals of man are temporal gains, pleasure, security, safety. Those end up being the highest things to attain to. And so when they measure societies on the basis of what is a good society versus a bad society, it's always something like that. So it never transcends those values into valuing things that are in any way ever transcendent. There's never a notion of the good. The good is always presumed. There's never a notion of what freedom actually is, or freedom to be what, freedom to do what. It's always just freedom. And so because it's anti-metaphysics most of the time, because it's an Enlightenment philosophy, it's always just kind of put out there as sort of generic ideas of freedom, liberty, quality of life, or something like that. So anyway, that's my take. Yeah.
I wanted to get more into something specific regarding what Jay's pointing to, is like practical things. I saw a comment. Thanks for that. Right now we have this system where, we're on platforms, and I used platform as a term that cities will eventually be seen as platforms. But if that's the case, and we're pissed about a company who's woke, DEI woke, don't say this, don't say that. If a company does run a city, and from your view, Austin, it's principled, so great. But it seems like the people who do pursue these company-run cities, like Jay said, it's all going to be Google, these kind of things, and their philosophy is going to actually dominate what the behavior of the city is. And what I mean by that is, maybe Austin wakes up in the city, thinks it's awesome, we're progressing here. You start your coffee machine, right? And there's a little I'm sorry, Austin, your tweet last week violated blah, 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 and you agreed to this in your, crypto agreement, right? Suddenly you can't make coffee. These little things add up. It's not even necessarily a big thing, because guess what? If you can't make your coffee, you'll find an alternative, great. But it's not like you're going to get up and move because you didn't get your coffee because the company shut off that particular aspect of your life, but maybe they add it. Maybe they say you can't go to the gym now, right? Maybe they say, and so these are not fantasies. This is an extrapolation of what we see now with corporations owning shit, right? And being able to tell you the ethics that you ought follow if you're going to be on their platform. And so you'd say, well, no, that's just an agreement. But what if they can just change the agreement once you're already in the apartment, right? The Amazon, well, we call them coom pods, but you're in the pod and it's going great. And then suddenly you start getting these notifications, right? Like that's what we're pointing to, at least I'm pointing to when I go, are there any red flags with these views? Fine. Let's say they're not utopian, like Austin says. I think they're tied a little bit to some vision, but let's say they just, we try them, right? Does that seem inevitable, Austin, that the woke corporations who are actually ahead of the game in all of this, by the way, they're going to institute the same kind of bullshit TOS for you to get your coffee. Sorry, buddy, shower's not today. You don't get a shower today. So what do you, is that has to be something you admittedly concede and say, well, yeah, that could be a big issue, right?
No, for sure. And I mean, like, one thing I would say though first is that, like, you have to consider that those things are happening right now, and they're happening under the current system that we have now. But what I'm advocating for is, excuse me, something a little bit different. But like, you know, it presupposing in this also too is like that the business owner and the person who builds the coffee machine doesn't have some rights as well. I mean, there is like such a thing as a private contract. Like if I want to create a contract with someone and say, I want to create a coffee machine that if one day I want to shut it off, then I should be able to have the right to create something like that. Who are you to tell me that I shouldn't be allowed to create that kind of a private contract? Now, we all live in the United States, and I agree that we should have a Bill of Rights and a Constitution, and that people should have rights, and that we should elect representatives to govern us to solve some of these problems, right? So I'm not an anarcho-capitalist, so I don't believe in a completely, private utopia, because one, I don't think that could exist, because two, the times that it has been tried, it hasn't worked successfully, just like socialist utopias have failed spectacularly and phenomenally. We have a lot more examples of socialist utopias that have failed. Jamestown in New Guyana, where everybody drank the Kool-Aid and killed themselves. Perfect example of a socialist utopia, right? That went wrong. North Korea. We have example after example after example, but we have so few examples on the other side. And you even said that. You pointed it out and said, well, where does this exist? Where has this existed, right? Fordlandia was an example of Henry Ford trying to create a community that was based on a utopian ideal that was mostly market-based. The corporation of Ford in the rubber plants, where they were, harvesting rubber for the tires, where they set up this community. And Ford was a very conservative man. He wanted to have conservative values, and he tried to impose them on the community of people in Fordlandia, which included workers were not allowed to drink alcohol. They had curfews. They had very strict rules, as exactly what you're talking about right here. And it failed. So the thing is that these utopian experiments that we're discussing right now, I don't think that they exist. They can't exist in a vacuum. And in the very few times where the experiments have been tried, again, whether it's the socialist utopia of Jamestown or whether it was Fordlandia, created by Henry Ford, those utopian experiments always fall apart because reality has a way of getting in the way of people's dreams to centrally plan a society. It didn't work with Epcot Center. It didn't work with Jamestown. It didn't work with Fordlandia, right? What tends to work are people who are able to make individual choices on a level with a certain basis of rights, a modicum of movement of freedom that they're allowed to have to be able to make their own decisions, and then to go out and transact and to contract to get all the goods and services that they need to accomplish whatever their goals are in their life. So really what we're at the end of the day, what you're talking about is still central planning, right? If it's whether it's a corporation or whether it's a government, like it's still something that I oppose in principle, this concept of central planning, which does tend to fall apart because one of us can never be as smart as all of us. And it's not that there's no plan, it's that there's more planners, right? And individuals are free to make these decisions about what coffee companies they want to contract with. But again, these utopian experiments tend to fail on their own merits, because their idealism usually just it can't work in reality, because people are people and they're individuals and they make their own decisions. And sometimes, if somebody may want to break their contract with the coffee company that they entered into, and for that, you're going to need a court to step in and to adjudicate a dispute. So there's always going to be some layer of a regulation on a corporation that's going to be some neutral arbiter third party. It's always going to exist, whether or not anarcho-capitalists say it should. It should be all private courts as well. There's going to be some outside regulatory force. The question is what that looks like, and how the rest of us can manage ourselves and manage society on our own, absent of some central vision and central plan handed down from us from a Politburo,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Well, you said one thing there, and I'll let Jay or Chad jump in here, is that you said, well, even in the corporate city, you do have rights. Well, I'm actually saying, what if all of the materialists and all of these coomers coming up are going to say, well, I actually don't care much about rights. Give me stuff, right? Give me stuff. Give me a conveyor belt subscription to my own life. Let me sit in the city and I'll trade off my liberties, and I'll abandon that construct and I'll trade it for another construct. Now, what do you say to those people? Because regardless of whether you think it's going to fail or succeed, right? I agree with you that these things fail. I think because they fundamentally don't account for other aspects of being a human being, which includes transcendental categories and things like this that we value actually more in the end. But regardless, if someone goes into the city and goes, hey, this is great, I get 3 years, 3 to 5 years here, and they give you everything you can imagine, right?
You can't sell yourself into slavery, right? So the 13th Amendment, no indentured servitude,
right?
No slavery. You can't.
But you can willfully forfeit your rights through a contract.
Yeah,
can't you?
I don't see something like that happening. I think most people don't want to live in the pod or eat the bugs. Are there people who absolutely listen? Jonestown happened. People drank the Kool-Aid. They committed suicide out in the jungle. There are absolutely people who do that. Like those people. There are people who want to live in a cult. How are you going to stop people from living in cults? Okay, there are cults. There are still cults. You're never going to stop people entirely from living in cults, right? You want to try and minimize it and encourage free thought, but you can't force people not to be in cults. It's impossible. There's too many cults, and we're all prone to cult thinking. Anyways, continue.
Well, one thing that I would say, a couple things, is that it's not so much just a matter of do people join cults just because people are cult-like. You can also have an intentional top-down degradation of the population through weaponized culture, and that's something that's existed for a long time, but particularly throughout the Cold War, pop culture was from the top down, both corporate and private and government, in a like dual operation, toxified to degrade the population. And this is something that the libertarians typically miss or not aware of. I'm not accusing you guys of that. I'm just saying that in my experience of a lot of debates, libertarians, they will sort of pass over this idea of toxic culture, which is created by the establishment to degrade the population so that they become pliable and ready to go into these kinds of settings and basically rat mazes is what I would say these smart cities will be. So my question to you guys would be, let's say, I mean, surely some of us probably have worked at a Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company at some point, right? I've worked for a couple of them. In my mind, the smart city run by one of these Fortune, it's going to be like living at work. Okay. Yeah. And I remember working at a Fortune 100 company, and I had a fat bitch manager screaming in my face, managing every little thing I did. And it was a nightmare. So I can't imagine that living in it. So if I'm given that, but with my coon pod, like that's going to be somehow a better thing. So my question is just that you said something earlier, like, why not let Sony have a spot at running a smart city? And I'm like, I mean, dude, that's going to be the same fat bitch manager, maybe even an AI fat bitch manager telling what you can eat, what you can do.
An AI manager.
Yeah, right. Like she pops in on the hologram, right, while you're in the toilet, and it's like,
and they force her to be overweight, so that representation and all that
accurately represent actual managers and corporations, which are all fat chicks, by the way.
Yeah, they have to. Listen, we're gonna shift a tiny bit here. I think we got a good chunk of meat in there. Chad, we were talking just before in the green room about how we pick. I think that people pick famous people, right? And they approach them at this point, especially. I think this has always been the case, but now I think it's even more rampant. And Jay's covered this a bunch, where you seek a spokesperson who's flashy, charismatic, talks loud, whatever, is pretty. And you approach them and you go, hey, you want to, yeah. Or you want to work for NATO? It's underneath the radar though. Like, can you push some of these narratives? Don't worry, you're doing a good thing. Don't you want to be bigger than the scripts that you read that you didn't actually create? Yeah, I know. I'm going to be great. I'll, Jesse Smollett. I'm going to put a noose around my neck. I love it. So we've seen this now. Chad, you've done some decent work on MLK, and you get a lot of backlash, right? I think MLK Jr. is one of those people where, whether or not it's organic in the beginning, that's not the point. The point is there are agencies that can sniff out influential people, right? The blue check marks of the 50s and 60s existed, and so you find them, you sort of groom them in a way, and then you have them become a product. I think you and I would agree, maybe Jay too, I'm not sure Austin's take on this, that someone like Martin Luther King Jr. was definitely utilized to the advantage of some other people, and to push certain things and certain certain outcomes, right? But now we have this. Jay, you did a little bit on I mentioned NATO. It was NATO, right? With Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Now, we were all called like complete lunatics when we'd say, well, no, there is culture creation. A lot of work has been done in this regard. Is go back to the sexual revolution and all of this. We can document it. We can look at it. So the question is today, is this running out of steam? Right. This I think the veil is dropping, where you start to see, well, there's more famous people, so there's some saturation now. So they don't have the same influence of like Muhammad Ali being like, oh, I'm going to do this thing, and and everyone's all like, yeah, that guy. Well, so many people are this now that it's almost making it sterile in a way, which I think is not a bad thing. But I'm wondering, is the veil dropped? Jay, you've covered this. Is it dropped? Are people already seeing, well, famous people, they just really don't have much influence now. They kind of blew it. I think they blew it with the Karunka. We can't say the other word on YouTube, but I think they utilized too many talking heads, and everyone's like, wait, how is this possible that every single person with a bright bleached smile ends up being on the same, basically like a board of directors side of big pharma? This doesn't make sense. So is it over? Is it the end of this, Jay?
I don't think it's over. Oh, sorry.
Okay, good. No, Chad, go ahead. Why don't you go?
Yeah, I don't think it's over. I think that they've grown more sophisticated in the way that they carry out these kind of agendas. And more often than not, you'll find that the celebrity or the individual in question themselves aren't really privy to exactly what it is they're a part of. I would say that LeBron James and his dealings with China he's not a very smart person. I don't think he knows what he's up to or how he's being used, but he's definitely being used in the same vein as, say, a Paul Robeson circa 1908, who was being used by 1908, 1918, 1919, 1920 area. He was a full-blown communist. And I think he was more aware of how he was being used and all too willing to be used in the same way that MLK was. But I don't think LeBron James is fully aware of what's going on. But again, they've grown more sophisticated, because over the course of the 20th century, what we've seen is the so-called expert class influencing the trajectory of our country These were the ones who were acting as the kind of brain trust, if you will, of the FDR administration, both Republican and Democrat administrations throughout the course of the 20th century. I mean, the whole political theatrics of it all, where you think that you're pulling the lever for one party's agenda over the others, when in reality, it's just one uniparty. This isn't anything new. This has been the case for a very long time. The veil is breaking, so to speak, insofar that folks like myself and you, Jim Bob, and Jay, and others are growing more aware of how ideological subversion works. But I think part of the reason of that is because we know what the word ideological subversion is. We know about Yuri Bezmenov sitting down with J. Edgar Griffin in 1984, talking to us about the way in which the KGB and the Soviet Union influenced ideological subversion, cultural demoralization here in the United States. And so we're aware of how this thing works. And even though someone like Yuri Bezmenov was able to put into a nicely packed 4-point process of how ideological subversion works, that's more for our understanding. The reality is it doesn't actually quite work out in exactly those 4 stages. It's kind of zigzag in the way that it truly works. We learn because we are all educated by the same mass compulsory public school education system. We understand everything in phases and bullet points, and this is the way that we understand things. And so part of Yuri's genius is that he understands the way that we were educated in the West. And so he gave us a framework to understand how ideological subversion works. But the reality is when the rubber hits the road, it's more zigzag and more kind of fluid in reality. So we don't know at a given time whether we're in a stage of normalization or crisis or destabilization or demoralization. Sometimes all these things are happening simultaneously, but they're happening nonetheless. The point being to make the public think that everything is happening in a vacuum or everything's organic. There's no hidden hand behind whatever is going on at a given time. And then along comes some, bright smiling politician saying that he has the answers if you would only vote for him or support his policy. And for the sake of safety and security, we end up pulling the lever for that politician, not realizing that the whole time, the whole point was to empower the federal government all the more at the expense of the rights and the freedoms of the American people. So this thing continues to happen over and over again. And I think politicians in the expert class today are working simultaneously to that end. And so that's the sophistication of it all.
And entertainment, you add the element of entertainment as well, which has never been as accessible. Like technology allowed entertainment and high production value to be ubiquitous, such that we can have a show like this. I mean, imagine this panel right now, this show, this quality, 40 years ago, it'd be like, what the hell do you have? Who do you know? But now everybody has that. And so I would, everything you said, Chad, but add in the technological aspect that, actually kind of adds to the confusion in a sense, but it also allows us to seek out alternative views and information so that we can, it's like a double-edged sword. Like, you open it up to everybody so you get more garbage like YouTube. There's going to be 85% garbage. What's the Pareto principle? 80-20. And then what? You have to find out the truth of the matter, but some people say we're even in post-truth. So like people don't even care that it's fake. You see this with AI stuff. You go, that's an AI influencer. The person goes, I don't care. They're filling this thing that I need, and that's the value. The value isn't that it's real or breathing or authentic or has a soul or it's this other thing. And I think that's true for politics at some level, where if the character fits and they say all the right lines, I think there's enough metadata they have access that you say X, you could probably predict a movement to the right or to the left to some extent. I'm not saying there's an effective Wizard of Oz who really can do it all. I think it ends up being quite a mess, right? So I'm not that big of a conspiratard, but I'm a little bit. I earned a helmet, but I'm not that bad.
Right. I agree. Listen, I think Chad is definitely right on the money. And I liked your point made by Jim Bob, where you talked about control over the culture. And I'll be the first to admit, like, I'm very white pilled, right? Like, I very much like am an optimist and see a lot of good things in our future. Maybe short term pessimistic, long term optimistic. Because I'll say this, like, when you think about the Hollywood system and how it used to be so much easier to control the media and the message, right? There have been sort of, information revolutions that have been occurring. In our lifetime, there have been several information revolutions, not just because of the medium with which how we're able to spread information, but how we can also broadcast information and who is considered to be credible in terms of public information, right? When I was a child, there were, 5-6 networks, how many, 5 or 6 news shows, and only one, Walter Cronkite was like the most credible person in reporting. And even with the Pareto principle, if like there's 20% good information, 80% bad, right? That's a low, noise signal to noise ratio there. But at least the tools are available for people like us to get the information. I mean, we are in some sense the elites because we are seeking out that information, and you are able to control 320 people who are going to listen to this show live, what I think the numbers are, right? It used to be that when we had 4 or 5 channels, 1 million people were watch a show, and that barely ever exists anywhere except online in the media. If you get 1 million people on live, like, you're talking about breaking like a stream or something like that. It does happen, like you get close, but mostly what we see with like the biggest information streamers now, like Dan Bongino, I think he got like 800 or 900,000 people watching live at some point, and it was like the biggest stream in all of history ever, and that was just recently. So there has been a power change. Can corporations and ne'er-do-wells come in and control their voice? And yes, sure, but I mean, the mob is even more powerful now than it used to be. The mob has more tools to uncover corruption. I mean, how many times are we saying? I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX and the fraud that was uncovered at FTX was uncovered pretty damn fast. Bernie Madoff, I think it took them like over a decade to reveal his fraud. Enron, for example, like everything is speeding up now. I mean, including the speed of the scams, but also the justice that's occurred. Because let's be honest, we frequently do not get justice from our justice system, which is why you see, sometimes unfortunately cancel culture mobs that will destroy a person unjustly. But because there's such a desire for people to know the truth about the people who are spreading information, find out who they're connected to, you do get justice. You do find out, people who are public figures that are pedophiles a lot faster than you would have found out years ago. People might have gone their whole lives and you didn't know that they had these associations either to Jeffrey Epstein or, God, you could probably find a dozen people in the media that, you don't know their names, but they had a small following and they got busted talking to a 12-year-old girl at a park because some kid with a cell phone was able to go out and record them and capture them and play the role of what used to be To Catch a Predator. Now everybody's To Catch a Predator, right? So
that's what the policing would be in the smart cities. It would just be like a mob of bees ready to sting someone, right? Maybe unjustly, but
the smart city will mandate that you meet your pedo quota every month.
Right.
Crazier than that, but. So there's a positive side to this, which is true, which is that we're at this inflection point where there's a massive war going on with controlling the voices, controlling the reach of stuff. I've dealt with this since 2016, got my whole website deleted. It's a nightmare to fight, but also at the same time, we're at a point where we're starting to have some victories. And it's not just in like alternative media and speaking about these kinds of issues. I mean, it's other areas as well, like Cat Williams talking about comedy being a gate.
There's a bunch of comedians out there that ain't never been funny, by the way, put into your face every day like they funny.
Right. Yeah. No, right. And they're not. And the establishment has been doing that. There's even like non-establishment people still trying to gatekeep. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but one of the biggest things on YouTube is comedy. And there's this whole fracas in the last year on YouTube of people pointing out. It actually started with Amy Schumer and people pointing out that she was foisted on everyone and she's not funny. Then it became Brendan Schaub and everybody being forced to, supposedly you're supposed to like Brendan Schaub, and he threatened people that were making fun of his stand up. And so it's like people not understanding the way the internet works. You can't threaten your audience to not like, you better laugh, but right. It's just crazy. So there's this revolution that's happening. Elon with X. I mean, whatever you think of Elon, I mean, certainly there's areas to be critical, but just in the issue of being able to have a little bit more free speech and make Twitter like the internet was in 2014 has been very good for me. My Twitter's grown well in the last year. So there are positives, there are pluses, but I think if we zoom out at the meta level and we think about this, I still just like, I'm worried that the internet itself was given to us by the public-private corporate partnership of the deep state and the Pentagon. I don't think it was given to us for freedom and liberty and libertarian values. I think that it's there ultimately. I mean, I wish, I want it to not be. I hope it's not going to be bad. There's a lot of positives. I'm pro Bitcoin. I'm pro, all of these things, but I'm also worried that it will have the effect of degrading society to the point where the future generations, Gen Z and younger, are going to actually be that blob of people who don't have any critical thinking skills and will be raised in a smart city and will be depopulated. I think that's the danger. And I don't know what the answers are. I mean, I think there are some things that we can do. I don't have any big scale solution to everything, but I mean, I'm just worried that the internet itself is also contributing to the decline. I don't know. And also in regard to Yuri Bezmenov, I mean, he's a great example of why I don't think the libertarian ethos itself is the answer. I think it has a lot of good points and a good critiques of the state. But if you look at Yuri Bezmenov, I mean, for one, everything that he says when he defected is what the CIA wanted him to say. So that's why you find, if you watch the full lectures, he goes on to talk about how we have to liberate the Eastern Europeans who are being oppressed because they can't have the butt sex, and we must give them the freedom of all the liberties of the gay. And it's like, wait a minute. So he's just another kind of tool, voicing what the CIA wanted in the Cold War. And we're actually doing the very things right now that Yuri said. So I don't know why if people have a problem with what's happening in Ukraine. I mean, Yuri said we need to liberate these people so that they can have, Skittles weddings and whatnot. So again, it's just liberty. I mean, he says some good things, but it wasn't the KGB that was running these operations in the Cold War. It was the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 running those operations, demoralizing America, not the KGB. And the CEOs of the Fortune 500 were not KGB agents.
Okay, well, maybe Yuri Bezmenov was a liar, right? So it's possible that he was also full of shit, right? Because he was a Soviet. So just remember that it's possible that Yuri Bezmenov was telling us what we the anti-establishment, we the revolutionaries, right? We who are the anti-Hillary Clintons, the anti-Mitt Romneys of the world, whatever you consider yourself to be if you're not a libertarian, right? We're on this side, and Mitt Romney and Hillary Clinton and everybody else is on the others. But just because Yuri Bezmenov told us a few things that we wanted to hear doesn't mean that we ought to take Yuri Bezmenov as the gospel truth. Like, it's possible to think that Hillary Clinton is a fraud and Vladimir Putin is a murderous killer, right? Like, you don't have to buy into either narratives. And my favorite former Soviet, who I don't trust completely, is a guy by the name of Mitrochkin, who was a former KGB general who defected to the United States. And he had a whole treasure trove of not just conspiracy theories that he brought with him, but actual conspiracies that intelligence agencies overseas had perpetrated upon the American public. Americans love conspiracy theories, and the Soviets knew this. And they know that if you wanted to have power over the American people, the best way is to spread conspiracy theories, because we love it. Mostly because we're so prosperous and wealthy compared to the rest of the world that our wives who are bored at home, or at least were in the 1950s and the Cold War until the 80s, they love conspiracy theories. The bored housewives, man, you see them on Twitter now because now they have social media and they're out there spreading the 9/11 inside job. Oswald didn't shoot alone. They've got nothing better to do with their lives than spread Soviet horse shit online.
So do you believe the official story about the Big 9 event?
And the deep state loves it because it keeps us retarded and arguing over things like an assassination from the 1960s and whether it's important that there was somebody on a grassy knoll or not, instead of fighting about the fight that's happening right now. So like foreign intelligence agencies are just as guilty as spreading horseshit conspiracy theories that Americans love and believe, because we are believers, man. We love to believe in conspiracy theories.
But don't you think that when somebody defects, they're going to they're going to put out what you haven't let me finish yet. You don't know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
You don't think that they're going to say what their new masters want?
No, I think they're going to say whatever's going to make sure that they get the champagne and the Coca-Cola flowing, and that's going to get them the benefit.
And that would be what the CIA wants, right?
Perhaps, maybe, but just
Jay,
just because the CIA says something doesn't mean it's wrong. Adolf Hitler drank water, right? So the truth can be the truth, even if just because the CIA says it.
You're accusing me of a fallacy, which I didn't argue. I didn't argue that.
But my point is that Yuri Bezmenov, some of what he said was ostensibly true, and some of what he said I think was ostensibly false. Right. So you got to be careful, especially when we talk about Soviet defectors, because a lot of those people, they weren't necessarily defectors. They were still working on the sides of the Soviets. Some of them were double agents.
Okay, I understand people have that theory, but let me give you an example. So again, he says that one of the things that has to happen is that we have to support the efforts of the West and the CIA in the Cold War because of the fact that there's a lot of oppressed people on the other side of the Iron Curtain in the Eastern Bloc countries who don't have access to Coke, Pepsi, and gay marriage. So what I'm saying is that is the CIA's line during the Cold War. They adopted through the Congress for Cultural Freedom the liberal policy of social ethics and liberal art ideas. That's why they funded modern art, abstract art, all of that. So if you understand the dominance of the CIA in American pop culture from the 1960s all the way up into the 1980s.
But that was smart, Jay. That worked, right? That was effective. I mean, you're making the CIA's point for them. I mean, they funded jazz artists, they funded American artists.
Feminism.
Yeah, it worked,
and it worked. I mean, their goal,
put us in the situation
their job.
of
I mean,
the
CIA aren't necessarily ideologues, right? They don't necessarily operate in an ideological fashion like we do. Right, so their mission changes based on the administration that controls them. The mission of the CIA from the 1950s.
That's a total normie narrative about what the CIA
from the 1950s is kill Castro and kill Che Guevara. Is not the same mission as the CIA.
It's a totally normie narrative of what the CIA is and what they do.
Jay, you've been drinking a lot of Kool-Aid yourself. It sounds like you want to believe the alternative mainstream narratives that agree with you completely entirely. And it's possible that maybe the mainstream narrative is horse shit.
Drinking Kool-Aid. So what specifically have I drank
horse shit that comes out of InfoWars on a daily basis because you want to sell us dick pills. And the establishment wants to sell us dick pills.
So no arguments.
And,
now you're going to
whether I buy my dick pills from
you're going
Pfizer,
to low tier stuff.
Whether I buy my dick pills from Pfizer or whether
you don't
I
have
buy
an actual argument.
Jones,
so right,
you're both selling
you want to have an actual debate, or you want to go into dick pill shit?
I'm telling you that you are not immune to the same corruption that the establishment is engaged in.
That's
just
not
because
an
you say you're against the establishment, you can still spread the same horse shit. Yuri Bezmenov.
That doesn't prove that I've actually done that. So these are all non-arguments.
Wait, so
how does that prove I've actually done that? By saying that it's possible for someone to spread misinformation. That's not an argument.
I'm sorry.
So wait, do you
have a
think?
Specific
wait, Austin, do you think
misinformation?
Yeah, do you think Jay through InfoWars, are you saying that he's part of a disinfo thing, or that it's just possible?
I'm saying that, building on my point, from people who are bored tend to believe in conspiracy theories, that what Yuri Bezmenov spread here in the United States may not have been the entire truth, and that things like just because the CIA says something doesn't mean that it's wrong. They may say something that's true on one day, and they may say something that's a lie. But their job is.
You haven't made an argument yet. It's all straw men. None of those.
I'm not talking about your argument. How can I straw man my own argument? I'm only saying
you're not.
This is
So
my
you're not
argument.
addressing my argument then.
Okay, well, I didn't hear a question. It may have cut out. So did you ask a question?
No, a question is not an argument.
Okay,
So
what is your argument?
If you're not addressing the arguments I made, then there was no reason to go to dick pills and
What would you like me to address, Jay?
Well, let's go back to the CIA and the Cold War. You said it was effective, and I didn't question whether it was effective or not. My point was that they adopted and utilized the arts and the principles of degeneracy as a form of cultural warfare.
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about your degeneracy. Like I don't sit around.
Well,
I don't
exactly.
sit around.
That's why
I don't care. Like I'm not.
You
I'm
don't
not
care that society.
Jay, no, I'm not. I don't
and
care.
This is why.
I'm not like you, dude. I don't sit around thinking about butt sex all the time, bro.
That's
I'm not.
Why you guys are useless.
I'm not obsessed with butt sex.
You don't care about
bro.
right. You don't care.
You are obsessed with butt sex.
You made my point.
You can't stop thinking about it, and it's your primary goal in life is to stop people from having butt sex. I don't identify with that.
You guys.
Hold on a second, Jay. Hold on. Austin, if what we're talking about is cultural and ideological subversion, right?
Yes.
Would you say
he just said
that
he doesn't care?
Right. Well, do you get what about
listen, I'm in favor of cultural and ideological subversion. We're engaging in it right now. We want to subvert the culture. Who wants to? We don't want to keep the culture the same.
No,
I'm not a conservative. I'm not a conservative. I'm a revolutionary. I want revolution.
Hold on a second.
I'm almost done. Don't get it twisted here. I don't want an old world order. I want a new world order. I want things to be changed. I don't want things to be how they were. I want Bitcoin. I want monetary reform. I want to end the Federal Reserve. I want to see Hillary Clinton in jail. I want to see Donald Trump be president. I want to see a revolution. I want to see things get shaken up because I don't want things to be the same. I don't have
no ethic, no
that I don't want to preserve.
Worldview. All you have is subjective libertarian pleasure principle.
Okay, well, the things you made up, the shit that you made up in your head is your fixed and fast moral principle, but mine is completely subjective. But yours is completely objective.
You literally just argued
based on something and based in facts and reality.
Right. That's why you don't even know what a fallacy is. You've made multiple fallacies already in this discussion.
Okay.
Because you can't separate subjective argumentation from objective.
So, Austin, I want to ask you, if cultural subversion, if you're for it, you're not for every version of it, right?
No, I'm for my own.
That's okay.
I'm for my cultural subversion.
So what's the basis for ethics here?
Oh God, please! Nico-Machian ethics. I'm not going to get into like ancient Greece and Marcus Aurelius. Right, I'm not going to sit down. I'm not going to sit down and talk Marcus Aurelius or Stoicism and
here, Jay, hold on.
You're making arguments that we need to adopt this. Dude, can you answer this or not? Right. And then you're saying, I want Nicomachean ethics, but I don't want to answer for what it means to go to ancient Greek ethics. That is
I don't, because I think that shit's boring, bro. And
I don't care that you think it's boring. You need a basis for your ethics.
Listen, if you don't think that I have a fixed moral principle and a standard, that's fine.
What is it?
We won't agree on that.
No, I want to know the argument for it.
But let's talk about what people give a shit about. Nobody cares about ancient Greece.
Everybody in this audience cares about it because you came with a moral claim.
They do not care.
You can't justify it. Yes, they do.
The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. Marcus Aurelius. There's the basis of my ethics.
Are you reading memes?
Marcus Aurelius. I'm reading Marcus Aurelius.
Hold on. Let me
accept Stoic ethics. Exactly. Silence.
Did somebody? I didn't hear you say.
Why should we accept Stoic ethics?
Oh my God! All right, listen.
You don't want to answer it, right?
No, I don't, because I think it's a pointless discussion.
Because you don't have an answer. That's
Jay. Hold on. Let me ask a different way. Is there any degeneracy that you point to that we ought not pursue in society?
Are you asking me?
Does the term degeneracy mean anything to you at all?
Yeah, to some extent, we probably wouldn't share the same definition of what degeneracy
And what defines
is,
that?
right?
What makes it? What makes
To
that?
degenerate, right? So to the actual literal definition of
I
degenerate.
don't know the definition of the word.
To have a
What is the standard in your worldview by which you judge
and to have it
something to be
degenerate?
degenerate?
But I'm not like Jay Dyer. I don't sit around worrying about the butt sex, right? It's not the top of my concerns for society.
So kids don't matter. You
People
don't think
might
it
be
matters
having
that
butt
kids
sex.
about-
Oh my
what about
God!
kids
it's
are being
degenerate.
indoctrinated,
We've
dummy.
got to stop them from
Wait,
having
hold on,
sex.
hold on.
This is the
Hold on.
dumbest, lowest
Hold on.
IQ
Here,
libertarian
Jay,
I've
wait,
ever
Jay,
talked
let me,
to.
let me take it one step at a time here. Is the current culture that I call degeneracy, and Jay does as well, are they pushing that on children?
Yes, and as
Does that matter? Does that matter to you?
Yes,
Is
yes.
it wrong?
And as a man who got booed when I ran for president for saying you should not be allowed to sell drugs to children, I can tell you that there are moral standards and principles
what are they?
that you do not cross.
And
Okay.
what are they?
So there are absolutely some moral standards and precepts.
What are they? What's the basis?
But I draw the line at children.
You won't answer.
So I just answered. I draw the line at children.
What
There
are
it is.
they? What are the standards?
I just said I
No, you
draw the
didn't.
line at
You
children.
stated your personal opinion. I want to know what the objective standard is.
But consenting adults are a different matter. So
what is the
consenting
basis of that being the standard apart from? Listen, you're being arbitrary. You understand? In philosophy, you can't be arbitrary.
Yes, I can do whatever the fuck I want. It's a free country.
So
I can
not
be
in a debate
arbitrary when I want to be arbitrary.
Not in a debate.
You
You can't do whatever the fuck. You just lost the debate by saying I can do whatever I want in a debate.
Of course I can. Yeah, of course I can do it. This isn't a debate format.
You don't know.
Jim Bob even
You're
said
bound
at the
by
beginning,
the laws.
we can do whatever we want. It's not a hard debate format, so I can do whatever I want. I can say whatever I like.
You don't even understand that doing it doesn't mean that you're. I'm talking about following the laws of debate, the laws of logic. Okay. So you think you can commit fallacies and the arguments are still good?
Okay, Mr. Yuri Bezmenov is everything.
So
the CIA has the same mission from the 1950s until today, right? So
hey, Austin, let me
tell
you. Hold on,
Jay can make shit up on the spot, but I have to go all the way to Greece.
Hold on, I'm gonna mute both of you. Hold on a second. I have a question. I'm gonna bring it back on tracks in a way that still follows where this is going. You, Austin, you do appeal. Your foundation, would you say, is based on rights?
Am I unmuted? Okay, yes.
Yeah. Rights?
Yes.
Okay. And so from your view, is it fair to ask what these rights are?
Oh, of course it is.
Okay, so what are rights from your view here? All right, would you agree that a right would you agree with the definition that a right is an entitlement absent a duty?
Yes, that's a pretty close to the technical definition of what a right is. A right, like the simplest way to explain it is that as a right is a guarantee.
Okay, so if a right is an entitlement absent a duty, from your view, when you say, well, I have a concept of degenerate, right? There's some degeneration of something. So there's a positive thing that's unraveling. Let's call it a fabric, right? So let's say from all of our views, there's a fabric. And when we see that fabric unraveling, we call it degenerate. We call it degeneration, right? That's a clear visual way to say it. So my question is, if a right is an entitlement absent duty, where do you get the duty to defend rights from?
Where do you get the duty to defend these rights from?
Yeah.
So could you rephrase your question in a different way?
Why
make it
more
low
ought
IQ?
we?
Okay, make it more low IQ.
Hold on, Jay.
Yes, because it's low IQ to want to understand and make sure you understand.
It's okay. Hold on. Why? Basically, if the thing you're defending is the rights, which is an entitlement absent a duty, it entails that a duty's somewhere in there, right? Entangled. And I'm asking, like, what's from your view, from a libertarian view, what actually grounds that we ought to defend rights if they are in fact just entitlements absent the duty by definition?
Well, not everybody has to defend rights. Very few people actually do, right? It's usually a very small group of people that end up defending rights overall. So, I mean, are you asking why every person should have to defend rights, or
let's say acknowledge them?
I don't know if you're asking a tactical question here.
How about
it's a philosophical question?
How about acknowledge instead of defend?
Well, a duty to acknowledge that they have. I mean, it depends, right? Like, not everybody has a capacity to do that, right? That's why the rights exist to an extent to protect the liberty of people who don't even necessarily have the capacity to acknowledge it, like children, for example, right? Or the mentally deficient, right? The mentally insane, right? Those people have rights even if they don't, can't acknowledge that they have those rights. They still, just like the unborn in the womb. They can't acknowledge that they have rights, but they do have rights. They can't acknowledge they have a duty to protect those rights. So we do that on their behalf through a constitutional government.
Okay, so if someone who doesn't have the capacity to know that they have these concept of rights, and they don't have the capability of acting out the duty, right? That's not embedded in the rights, by the way. The duty is added. I'm asking. If granting someone rights that they can't actually act on, in a way you can violate their rights because they don't have the capacity to act on them, right?
Happens every day, but you shouldn't, obviously. I mean, I think abortion is a crime, and a crime against the rights of an individual. That person can't speak out on behalf of their own rights, so you have a person who speaks out for them as an intermediary. But I mean, most people do not acknowledge or have a respect for rights, or second, a duty to those rights.
I got you here. Jay, let me finish this one last thing. So my question is, if Jay and I agree that someone who's walking around the street sort of not fully naked, but almost, and it's, from your view, it's their liberty. They didn't steal anything. They didn't violate anyone else's rights, and they didn't take, anybody's stuff or whatever. From our view, we have a duty to actually violate their autonomy, right? And from our perspective, take care of them in a sense. Now, taking care of such a person is actually a violation of their rights from your view. And that's why I ask, this is why I fundamentally reject libertarianism, having gone through a phase of it, is that if rights are just privileges absent duty, you still have to ground the duty part. And that's why Jay's asking about the ethics, because the ought claim that we ought to acknowledge rights is separate from the rights itself, right? So from my view, it all comes down to duties. And the problem with libertarianism is, if you value liberty above all things, liberty is a description of what is, right? It doesn't tell us what we ought to do with liberty. It doesn't tell us when we should violate liberty or when we shouldn't violate liberty. It just gives you a baseline.
But that's kind of the beauty of it, right? I mean, isn't that sort of the beauty
look,
of it?
Does San Francisco look beautiful?
Hold on.
Does San Francisco look beautiful?
Well, you're not using San Francisco as an example of libertarianism, right?
No, liberty, just liberty.
Because San Francisco is like the worst example.
How about Burning Man? Burning Man?
Well, Burning Man,
that's
actually,
better, right?
Much better, much more better than San Francisco. At least they clean up after themselves, right? Right, but still, again, like you ask yourself. I guess what I'm trying to understand here is, like, are you saying that people don't have rights?
No, yeah, I'm actually saying they don't have rights.
Hypothetical. Can I make?
All right. Well, I did not know. So I was not aware that you did not believe that people did.
I think they're a social construct that are left with two things: force, whatever the force is, and two, whatever the standard of ethics is that's being imposed. And we already all agree that rights, as you even say them, actually, not everyone gets them, because you can violate them to do certain things. You can stop people from doing certain things based on their situation. So the problem is, it's the duties. I think my belief is that only duties exist. And if rights are privileges absent duties, you still need duties to exist. And from the libertarian principle, the only imperative is to seek freedom And to look at liberty or freedom as an end goal is to look at efficiency as the end goal. Well, efficiency is a description toward a goal, but it can't be the end goal, just like liberty can't be the end goal. It's actually a start point, if anything. And that's why ought claims, like Jay's pointing to, the ethics, the meta ethics, which I didn't really want to get into. It bores the shit out of everyone except for me and maybe Jay and maybe Chad. He has a pipe, so it probably doesn't bore Chad. But it is important because if you organize a society around libertarianism, you're actually entailing that there is a meta-ethical principle that you ought to follow. And when you say something is degenerate, you're actually assuming there's a positive in which being torn apart, and we just don't know what that positive is, that fabric that's being torn apart.
Okay, I don't know that necessarily, other than the idea that we don't have rights. I'm not sure that what you and I are saying is necessarily in conflict. Some of what you're saying there is a utilitarian claim, right? You're stating that, you know, if a society existed around these fundamental ideals, so it does beg the question of, you know, whether or not that society, if it were to come into creation, would be able to fundamentally create moral goods that then could potentially be degenerated, you know, if degeneracy were introduced into that system, right? What would that degeneracy be, and how would that system be degraded through that degeneracy or that moral decline? So it seems that, you know, it doesn't sound like I'm disagreeing with much of what you're saying, other than this concept that individuals, you know, don't have rights.
No, this is where we disagree, is that when you go after Jay about like the butt stuff, is that the culture that we're seeing, right, in the West and other developed nations, is that there is a clear, deliberate pushing of certain behaviors, in this case sexual. They're not just sexual. There's drug behaviors being pushed. There's a lot of behaviors, but that specific thing is actually directed pretty much directly, explicitly toward children. And so what we're saying is that if your politics
off the San Francisco metaphor, I mean, like when I confronted you on the San Francisco example, I mean, like, you don't believe San Francisco is an example of a libertarian city, right?
No, I didn't use libertarian, but it's
okay.
Liberty based. It's liberty. It's based on the concept that liberty above
that's
all.
Because there's no self-evident definition of what liberty actually is, or what your position actually is. You yourself said it was subjective, and that's why I asked you, why do you think that fallacies are able to be done in a debate? Do you not think that a debate is governed by the rules of logic and critical thinking?
Well, I never said that the definition of liberty was necessarily subjective. So talking about straw mans, I never said.
When we asked you what it was, you said,
no, you asked me for where my moral standards came from. You didn't ask me what my objective definition.
You don't think liberty is that not a value judgment?
It is a value judgment, but I never said it was subjective. So you can disagree with me, but please don't put words.
Those things are subjective. I asked you about value judgments.
Are you asking about my value judgments now?
I asked you then, and I'm asking you now.
Okay. So what about value judgments are you asking me specifically?
Where do you get the standard? Because if you're going to say there's oughts, you got to have a basis for the standard.
Okay.
Not just saying there's one.
Is it okay? Is it okay? Do I have to have one standard like you do? Or am I allowed to use multiple?
No. You don't even understand what it doesn't even understand what it means to ask.
I'm not like you guys. I don't agree. I am not a social conservative. Okay, so I do not conform to an inherently monotheistic view of society that bases all value judgments on one single standard handed down to me from on high. I don't have.
Hey, Austin, are you a?
I don't have.
Are you a
don't even understand?
Are you a postmodernist, Austin?
He doesn't know what.
No, I'm not a postmodernist. No, I do not agree with the wokies that there is no such thing as objective truth.
Okay, so what's the basis?
What distinguishes?
But I don't believe in one truth handed to us down from on high.
No, you do. You do. You do. Hold on.
No,
Austin, you do.
I believe in an amalgam. I believe in what's called triangulation.
What's the one thing? Hold on, Austin. You said something false. You got to be corrected. Well, there is one truth. There is one truth that you rested on.
I do not believe in one metaphysical.
Yes, you do.
moral
Yes, you do.
standard
Yes, you
that is
do.
handed down
You
to us
Yes,
from
you
on
do.
high.
You understand
Hold
that
on.
that's a single.
I think that the
principle.
only way to
That's
find
your single
truth-
principle, dummy. That's
I
the
think
single
that the
principle.
only listen, Jay. I don't call you like a basement dwelling retard that looks like you smell bad and you haven't taken a shower in a month. So if you could keep the personal
I mean, if
insult,
you're gonna
you wanna
troll
have
me,
a- if
the
you want to
troll
have a
should at least be
philosophical,
funny.
before you
That
criticize
was Reddit
others,
here,
all
dude. If
people
you're
are
gonna
dummy,
troll me, it should at
maybe you
least be
should take
funny.
a shower,
Austin,
retard. Because
Austin.
I could smell you from here and how you look. So
It's
let's
not
Austin.
even-
Did you
Austin,
copy
hold on.
and
There
paste
is
your
the,
jokes?
there's the
dude?
concept. There's the
You copied.
concept.
So his
in
ethical standard
determining
is
what is
copied
in
and pasted
determining
from
what
a
is
meme and
moral.
for his jokes.
Listen, you fucking retard. I'm speaking. Okay. There is a concept to find out what is true called triangulation. And what you do is
You don't even
you
understand
get-
that
you
we've
have
already
you
refuted
have a
that.
gap.
Hold
Let
on,
me tell you
let him-
guys how
He
logic
doesn't
works.
even understand that it's one.
Hold on, let him
Let
go.
me
Jay, let him
explain-
go. Jay, let him go.
Let me explain to you how you find logic. You go out and you find information. There's an information
logic.
gathering
That's not
part.
what
You don't
logic-
start. You don't start with a conclusion.
That's not what
You
logic
don't.
even is.
You don't start with
You find
here's
it.
What's
the
a-
truth.
You
Hold
and
on.
now we
find
find
logic.
Jay,
information.
hold on a second. Let me just manage this. Austin, you said you don't stand on a single truth, right? A monolithic truth for your values. And then you said
I do not believe that truth is handed down to us from high
Okay.
as a revelation. I do not believe
Gotcha.
in a revealed.
revelational
I do
symbol.
not
Okay.
believe in a
You can't do
revealed
that.
Okay.
revealed truth. No, I do.
Okay,
not.
hold on. How? And then you said you triangulate to see what's logical and true outside. And I'm asking you from both of those standards, right? From both of those statements that you don't get any revelation of what's true. You triangulate and you use rationality and reason, right? I'm asking you, well, it seems as though your foundation is actually rested on one solid brick that you assume before you can look out in the world and find it. And it's called a human right.
Well, that's only one example amongst many. See, the thing is that if these concepts, they work together just like the construction of a building, right? You have to have one pillar and then the next, and then you have to build it all on the foundation, okay? And so in order for us to determine, in my view, in order to us to determine what is true, we have to go out. We don't know what is true and then go out and find facts to support it.
Where did you find rights?
We find facts, and then we put them together.
Great.
You
Where did you find
rights?
rights? Where'd you find rights, though, then? If your standard for epistemology and what's true is looking out and doing triangulation and reasoning, I'm asking you, how did you come to the conclusion using that method that rights exist?
Well, here's the thing. I'm willing to change my mind if I'm wrong, but I drew this conclusion based on a litany of literature that was convincing enough to me, and I would present to you. And hope that you would be
whole
convinced.
litany, a whole litany of literature.
A whole body
Not
of
while
literature
you're a cat lady. A whole
that I
litany?
find
Was
to
it
be
a whole
convincing.
litany or a little.
All right.
So wait, literature. What if we say, well, that's what revelation is to us? So you still have a problem in your method, because you said your method is you don't start from your conclusion and you go out and find things. So let's say you found literature, right? I'm asking you, what method did you determine to say that rights exist? I'm not sure how you would possibly come to the conclusion by looking to the external world that something like rights exists.
I wrestle with that. Listen, Jim Bob, I wrestle with that, right? I wrestle with that just like I wrestle with a lot of concepts. And, I absolutely could be wrong. And, you could convince me that what I have divined from my education and my knowledge and limited experience could be incorrect. But I can only show you what I have read in regards to the natural law, in regards to, the treatises of government, John Locke, right? Life, liberty, and property. I can only point to those, right?
John
because
Locke.
me being a secondhand purveyor of ideas, I can only show you those and say, this is what I believe to be true based on how closely it corresponds to what I believe to be reality. And I ask you to believe it as well.
Sure.
Based on whether or not you can. But I could be wrong. I'm willing to admit that.
What I observe in reality is force wins, both in the animal kingdom and the human. And so for me,
what do you mean?
This is the descriptive truth about reality in all animals and humans is that force force wins. Do you disagree?
I mean, like, you just mean in general, like 100% of the
Just wins.
time, or you just like in
It's
general?
there's always force ready to go, either looming
Yeah.
or there's always force being
Yeah,
used.
yeah, I agree.
Okay.
And I mean, like,
So-
so I wrestle with that, and I'll tell you,
Okay.
I think that, you know, it's difficult to live in a society where we can balance to create a society where there is a balance against those laws of nature, right? So, like, just to create a civilization, if we will, is to sort of reject the fundamental root.
You mean
basis
appeal
of
to
hu-
you
of
mean
nature.
you mean appeal to something supernatural, right?
What do you mean?
You have to reject the brute nature, right? For us to have dignity as human beings, right? To ground the value of us being human beings, which is not identical to your dog,
Right.
is something not found in nature. So we don't find these things, you know, rights assume dignity, right? But it also assumes some sort of duty. And so if we both agree the descriptive truth in premise one for the world is that force wins and force is always in action, or it's looming at least, right? It's always looming. And so if that's the case, then would you agree that it actually wouldn't be a right that informs our behavior, but rather a duty that would actually give us how we ought? Right. Okay.
Sure.
So if the truth of the matter is force wins, and that's the way of the land for animals and humans, that there's something that intervenes that isn't necessarily an entitlement. And would you say if that entitlement even existed, which I don't believe it does, you would still have to point to the duty in which informs us how we should interact with each other?
Not necessarily. I mean, you're partially right. I mean, I do think that, like, force wins in nature outside of what man has created. But you know, cops, courts, you know, nuclear weapons, right? The instrumentation of the state, right? So since I'm not an anarchist and I do believe in a limited government, then that means that I do believe in an artificial third party, you know, interceding in order to ensure that force doesn't always win. And I think the truth is that it doesn't, right? The fact
hold on.
Hey, wait, I'm almost done. The fact that grandma, you know, can safely go and get groceries here in mid-Missouri without having to worry about bands of highwaymen or thieves
because of force.
Because of force, but that's introduced in a way to ensure that force doesn't always win.
The threat of force does.
The threat of force always wins.
Yeah. If you want to appeal to rights, all you're appealing to is an agreement that you have an entitlement that ought not be violated, and if it is, there's a consequence that is force, right? And so force wins is still descriptively true even in your system of rights. Now, what we're pointing to is that's actually not good enough for a society that has any sort of fundamental principles or good, a sense of a good, and these things, that you actually need to confront the problem that entitlements themselves actually just leads you down a path like we're seeing today, where now you have modifiers for entitlements. You have the gay entitlement, you have this entitlement, the black entitlement, the, you know, whatever, and you just keep adding entitlements. Now, notice how no entitlement that's ever given is ever paired with the duty. What grounds this duty that we ought to value or acknowledge entitlements at all? And from your view, you can't ground it in the natural world. It's nowhere found. And so the thing that actually makes us intervene as human beings is the assumption that we're actually not just animals. We're not just a part of nature, that something is in us that's bigger than that. And it necessarily needs to be supernatural, because you can't find these things in nature. And so we're asking you.
I can be convinced. I could be convinced of that. And certainly I'd love to see your evidence for it. And I'm willing
evidence
to
for supernatural. Well, what's the evidence of a right?
I would love to see. Listen, I'm not. Well, hey, listen. I'm not the one making claims. I'm not making.
You are.
I'm not making extraordinary claims.
You did. Right. A right is a supernatural.
No. Hey, everything that I say I can point to. And
where's a right?
And verify.
Where's a right? Where's a right?
Low tier.
But listen, you're the one making extraordinary claims. Extraordinary
rights exist.
Claims require extraordinary. You're saying there
rights
is
exist.
Supernatural. You're working
Hold
on
on.
that premise.
Our
Austin,
position is
right.
actually
I
coherent
think- I
because
believe
it
that
actually
rights
makes sense
exist.
that there would
Rights
be
exist.
rights.
Rights
He's not
exist
gonna-
is
He's not
supernatural.
going to answer
Could
me.
you
He's
be
just
wrong?
going to talk over me.
Do you
because he's such
believe
a
that you
goof.
could be wrong about your worldview?
My
Are
worldview.
you willing
I
to
don't think so.
admit that
No.
that your metaphysical claims could potentially be wrong?
No.
No, because metaphysics needs to be because here's why, Austin. Hold on.
See, we
First
don't
of
live
all,
in the same world.
no, hold on a second. Let's just go one thing at a time. Austin, you said extraordinary claims require evidence. I simply
they do.
asked you.
Yeah,
I'm
so
telling you that a right is an
where's the
extraordinary
right? Where's
claim,
the evidence
and
for
I'm
that?
asking you where the evidence. I'm telling you, Austin, as an olive branch, you already believe in the supernatural. A right is meta-natural.
God, that's cringe.
Where is it? Where is it?
God,
Where is it?
Guys,
You're
just
cringe.
guys,
Because you
guys,
don't,
and again,
you won't
like,
answer that
someone
question.
who's telling you that like a basis of rights that's built up
Where?
on a litany,
Your
a
basis.
foundation of
Your
scholarly
basis.
evidence.
What's
It's
your
not the
basis?
same. It's not the same thing.
What is your
claiming
basis?
as claiming
he can't
revealed
answer
truth.
this. He
Right?
can't
It's
Where's
not
the
the
right?
same
He
thing.
literally
right?
can't answer it.
It's
Where's the right?
The entire audience sees
we're
that
not
we literally
dwelling.
can't
We're not
answer
even
it.
speaking. We're talking past each other.
Are there
No, we're
evidence
not,
for
because
rights?
Your
No,
claims
you
are
won't
based on the
answer.
supernatural, and mine
Where's
are
a
not.
where's a right?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's grounded. That's the point.
Where's the right
Yeah.
though? It's supernatural.
It's
It's not
arbitrary.
found in nature.
Well, where is your thought? Do you have thoughts? Are they in your brain?
They're
Can you tell me your
metaphysical.
thoughts?
Yeah,
No,
I
Like,
believe
if I were to
they're
open up your
physical
brain, could I show you
Yeah,
your thought? But
great,
you have
great,
thoughts,
great.
right?
We both
Okay,
agree.
now
Do I
that-
need,
believe
do I
in
need
This
to
is
open
good.
up your
Okay,
skull to
good.
prove that there's a thought?
yeah.
Yes.
We good. Good. We reject materialism. Do we both not reject materialism now, right?
No, I do not reject materialism.
Okay, so
There we
where's a
go.
right?
Huh.
So where's a right then?
I like you. So you're saying concepts?
Which
don't-
molecules make up a right?
Yeah, tell us where right is.
Well, listen. You'll have to talk to a
Listen.
brain chemist
Listen,
to explain to you what the electrical
no
symbol.
chemistry can tell you where a right is.
Okay, all right. Well, listen.
Hey, listen.
You-
hey,
you make
you
claims
have
of
an
the
actual
supernatural.
argument or not?
I simply deny them and say I don't see that that's the case. I'm willing to believe it.
How about take
Right.
another example? How about take another example that you appeal to? Are the laws of logic real? Do you believe they exist?
The laws of logic. Do I believe that
Yeah.
they exist? Yes.
Yeah.
Where?
Okay. So
What
where do they
molecules
exist?
make up the laws of logic?
Right.
Oh my God, guys! Like you want to go on and
Yeah,
on.
so
for
every
this.
time you
It's
can't
so
answer, you do
esoteric
this.
and
Oh my
boring.
God, guys!
It's a
really?
fair question.
No,
But there's
so
so
boring.
much
So
literature.
listen, Socratic. You want to talk
So
about
much
Socratic debate,
literature.
right? So like,
No.
how do the laws of
So
logic
much
exist?
literature.
Well, you're asking, does Socratic debate method work? Okay.
No, that
Do
that
I need to-
requires
Do I
no.
need to explain to you like how to do the Socratic method?
Yeah,
and
we're so
like,
dumb. Please enlighten us. Enlighten
Yeah, Austin,
people,
Austin,
man, please
debate-
Enlighten us.
Austin, debate is not the same as the laws of logic. Debate presuppose the laws of logic. We're asking you if you. I don't know why this is hard for you to concede to. You appeal to things that are not found in nature, that don't weigh or smell, or you can't see them. Right? This isn't controversial. You appeal to things that are not found as matter. Correct?
No.
You don't. Okay. So where is a right found as matter?
So right is a concept that arises from matter.
How does it arise from matter? Is
Right.
it matter?
Then you're not a materialist.
It is just because something is a concept doesn't mean that it's not material, right?
What molecules
If
make
something
up
is
a concept?
created from
What
material,
molecules make up a
it's
concept?
still material.
What
Okay.
God
molecules
damn,
make
why
up
do
a
you,
concept?
this is not even an interesting
on.
conversation, and I feel bad
It
for
is.
Because
Chad.
you don't have an answer to it.
Chad,
Listen,
let's go to- let's go to
I
Chad.
don't mind talking
Hold on,
about it.
Jim
I
Bob.
just think it's boring.
He accused me. Hold on. The thing that got this all sour was that he accused me of foisting conspiracy theories. He doesn't even know what I talk about. He just assumed that because I'm on InfoWars, I foist all the conspiracy theories. Name one thing that I teach that's false, or one thing I've said false about Yuri Bezmenov. You said I just made it up. Can you explain it? Because you immediately got salty over that. No justification for those accusations.
Okay.
Well, so the question that I had for Austin was, I mean, you accused Jay of building a straw man, if I'm not mistaken. But you then use a straw man to explain Jay's view as being of wanting people not to have butt sex and basically policing people as far as their morals and things are concerned. I guess my question for you is, like, how is your view not a postmodern view? If your basis if your argument isn't based on any kind of objective understanding of truth and morality, if you are kind of adhering to this more fluid way of thinking and of having your views changed by, I guess, the next smartest person in the room, how is that not postmodern?
Well, I mean, it's, God, man, I hope you're asking that question legitimately, because postmodernism is to suggest that there is no objective truth. I do believe that there is objective truth, but I don't necessarily claim to know all of objective truth. I don't claim to know all of the answers. I only know actually, I think I know very little in regards to all of the potential of human knowledge. Most people know very little, right? So like the concept of knowledge itself, we are very limited as humans with these meat brains of what we can actually have a capacity to understand. So just because I don't know it all doesn't mean that I don't think there is an objective standard. I do. And when I find those bits of truth along the way, those very rare jewels in my search for knowledge, like I reveal them, I believe, and I'm willing to have them challenged. I'm willing to have them questioned.
Oh,
but
really?
I don't think you. But wait, but
I don't detect
have,
that at all. You're
I
not
don't
willing
think.
to have
Okay,
that
you can say
challenge
it,
at
but
all.
I'm almost
You
done.
immediately went to
I
ad
want you to say
hominem.
it, but like
As
I don't
soon
think
as I
you're not a
started challenging it,
postmodernist if you
as
don't
soon as I
believe in a
started
higher
challenging
power.
it,
Like
you went to
you
ad
don't like.
hominem.
It's not
So
Christian.
he just talks
versus
over. So he
postmodernist.
knows when there's a
I mean
person.
that's. Hold
who
on, I'm
can't
almost
answer.
done. Jay,
Hold
you
on,
can.
hold
You
on.
can. You're.
So that's his
Hold
whole. That's his
You
whole
can.
modus operandi.
You can slander me in a moment, Chad.
Slander.
It's not this question
not
of
what slander is.
it's not theism versus postmodernism, right? You don't have to be a theist, in order to not be a postmodernist,
You do.
right? You can not be a postmodernist and not necessarily
Yeah, but
believe
not
that the
consistently.
objective truth is handed down
He
as
doesn't understand
revealed
the difference
knowledge,
between logical
right?
consistency
There are
and
plenty
just
of
doing
there are plenty of secularists who do not accept the postmodernist
That's
view
a
of
fallacy.
society.
Do you even know what a fallacy is? Like you just appealed to
Anyways,
a mass fallacy, like mass appeal. Do you know what fallacies are? No.
So
he doesn't know.
so Austin, do you would you say that your views as it relates to morality and things like that are more humanist?
yes.
Okay.
And what is a
So-
fallacy? What's a fallacy?
Here, let Chad run this line. Let Chad run this line. Go ahead, Chad.
So break that down, if you will. So you would be more humanist in your, I guess, moral worldview.
Yeah, I consider myself a secular humanist in the sense that I think that the concerns of humanity and of material concerns, things on this planet, should be the primary concern for humans and not that which is celestial, right? So that's that's how I would define,
So
a
why
humanist.
did you immediately go to the ad hominems?
Did you want to follow up with that, Chad?
You're not going to answer. So he's just going to ignore me because you went to ad hominems first. You
I
said
just think
you wanted to be challenged. You don't want to be challenged.
No,
and you
I
went
don't
to ad
want to.
hominem.
I don't roll around in the mud with pigs because you both get dirty and the pig enjoys it.
So you want to be challenged. When you're challenged, you go to ad hominems. Why?
Okay. So Chad,
You're not going to answer.
Is your question then
So he
essentially?
doesn't have answers. So
And I don't want to. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
He's an
Chad.
enlightened
Are you-
single gay
are
man.
you
in
of
an
the
apartment.
belief-
He's an
Are you
enlightened
of the
single
belief-
gay man in an apartment.
Jay, hold on. Chad hasn't talked a lot. I actually want to see
Yeah.
where he runs this. I want to see where he runs
So
it.
I mean, like
after the pipe.
do you like is postmodernism, like secularism and humanism aren't intrinsically tied to postmodernism?
How aren't they?
Well,
You say they're you say
here,
they're not.
I'm
intrinsically
here on the
tied.
example in front of you, right? So I believe that there are objective moral standards and that truth is a real concept that exists, right? But it's not ever changing. Now, our knowledge and our understanding of it may be changing because when I say I think I know the truth, I could be wrong, and I'm willing to change my mind if you provide evidence that contradicts my beliefs and my worldview, my understanding, or you provide facts that contradict, and you're able to effectively persuade me. But the truth was the truth, even if I didn't understand it. A postmodernist would say the truth changes, or I'm living my truth. And that's not what I'm saying. And that's
But wait,
not
hold on a second. You are saying that, and here's how. Because if you're a materialist and truth and the logic and these things are material and they come from a mechanism called the brain, then these are just kind of like effects that come from a machine, right? And so those effects could change. Like, how could you say one group of molecules called the truth from a brain is true and another group of molecules from another brain is false? I don't know how you're going to say the truth
one is just incorrect.
Yeah,
Right?
but
One
that
is just-
appeals to the chemical reactions again to another brain, right? And so this is why materialism should be rejected wholesale, because when you say, well, Chad just said a truth, but that just came from his brain. It's just an emergent property of a machine. And then you say, well, that's true for what you just said, right? Austin, you have to say
exactly.
yes.
Not
It is.
exactly.
How could it not be? How could it not be?
There's a lot of complicated concepts in what you've said, right? And so, there's a lot to unpack there. But I don't know that necessarily materialism is, requires one to believe in an unfixed concept of what is true, right? I believe the opposite of that. So I do think that materialism and objective reality and objective truth, like, they all exist within the same plane or the same sphere.
Here, let's go to aesthetic. Let's go to aesthetics. That's good.
I'm
Thanks
gonna
for
head
the
out. Hey, if this
All
guy's
right.
not going to answer any questions, there's no point me being here really. So,
All right. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate
yeah.
it.
Well, good luck with being a single gay man in an apartment with a lot of books.
Oh, okay. Well, good luck with obsessing over gay sex, you smegma smelling retard. See you later.
You don't even have good jokes, dude. At least if you're going to make a good joke.
Okay.
Come on.
Well,
I got a rebel
hopefully a
tooth.
bath is in. Hopefully a
You
bath
could've made fun
is
of
in
my
your
tooth.
future.
I got a rebel tooth. The best you've got is the
hopefully
best you've got is
tonight.
showers.
Hopefully tonight a bath is in your future,
Showered.
dude. Wash your hair. Use shampoo,
Good one.
right?
Yeah,
And like
shampoo,
drink the
washing hair.
fluoridated
High-quality
water.
jokes, dude.
Right? Don't forget to run the fluoridated water through
Don't
your
call us
tap.
a single gay man in an
Don't let
apartment.
the CIA chip mind control you. Anyways, can we please have a different discussion?
Okay,
You want to discuss aesthetics?
Austin, yeah, what is your reason for saying something is more beautiful